Welcome to the next video in our book series on the book of Jubilees and our comparison of it to information in Genesis. I have combined 3 chapters in Jubilees. They were a little bit shorter, and chapters 7 through 9 fit a nice theme. And so that's what I'm going to present tonight is chapters 7 through 9, talking about the vineyard of Noah and the division of the earth. And so we'll cover the whole time frame leading up to the Tower of Babel. So let's get started. Oops. And the background, it's been a couple weeks since you got a video. So remember, Noah has landed the ark, and he and his sons entered in a covenant with Yahuwah. That was what we just did in Jubilees chapter 6. So in order to understand why Abraham had to happen, you first need to see what happened to Noah and his sons. I mean, if Noah and his sons had probably gone differently, then we wouldn't be talking about Abraham necessarily like we do now. So let's see what happens. We're in Jubilees chapter 7, and Noah is planting a vine. And as you can tell on the screen, I've been lining up the information. We're going in order of Jubilees, but I'm putting on the left-hand side the information from the book of Genesis as it lines up with the text. So, Jubilees chapter 7, and in the 7th week, in the first year, 1317, Amuno Monday thereof, in this Jubilee, Noah planted vines on the mountain on which the ark had rested, named Lubar, one of the Ararat mountains. Genesis 9 has got the same thing about him planting a vineyard. And realize that we, in Jubilees chapter 5, talked a whole lot about where I think the God culture thinks and other people think the ark actually landed. So keep that in mind. If you haven't seen that video, then I suggest you go watch Jubilees chapter 5. It's really interesting. And they produced fruit in the 4th year. And he guarded their fruit and gathered it. And in this year, in the 7th month, and he made wine therefrom and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the first day on the new month, on the 1st month. So Noah is celebrating the new year. And this is one of the 4 set-apart remembrance days to Noah. If you'll remember, that was in Jubilees chapter 6. So he is waiting until it... cut this section. And they produced fruit in the 4th year, and he guarded their fruit and gathered it in the year in the 7th month. And he made wine therefrom and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the first day of the new month of the 1st month. So Noah is celebrating the new year. That's one of the 4 set-apart days, if you'll remember from Jubilees chapter 6. In that last episode that we did, there's 4 remembrance days for Noah that were put into the calendar and on the heavenly tablets. So he's celebrating New Year's, basically. And he says, and he celebrated with joy the day of this feast. And he made a burnt sacrifice unto Yahuwah, 1 young ox, 1 ram, 7 sheep, each a year old, and the kid and the goats, that he might make atonement thereby for himself and his sons. And he prepared the kid first, and placed some of its blood on the flesh that was on the altar which he made, and all the fat he laid on the altar where he made the burnt sacrifice, and the ox and the ram and the sheep, and he laid all their flesh on the altar, and he placed all the offerings mingled with oil upon it. And afterwards he sprinkled wine on the fire which he had previously made on the altar, and he placed incense on the altar, and caused a sweet savor to ascend acceptable before Yahuwah his sovereign ruler. Now, there's a few things that we should take note of. First, Noah is following Torah, instructions he got from somewhere about how to handle fruit trees or vines, and he's following things that you will find in the book of Leviticus that are written. And this is long before Moses. And Noah is following instructions. And here, he's building an altar, and he's doing an atonement offering on the first day of the year. Okay, I think this is just really interesting. I mean, Genesis doesn't mention any of this. So, I asked my own questions to myself, like, was the Levitical priestly information passed down from Enoch to Noah? I think so. Are these sacrifices actually acceptable? Nothing in the text says they were required or asked for. Remember, I mean, he was not given. We don't see any instructions. There's later in the text that I do believe that Enoch passed down information, and that Noah was following the instructions that had been taught to him. You'll see why. So, I've studied all the words for sacrifices, by the way, and this is something we're going to study in our community. And this is the type of sacrifice, because there's multiple words and multiple types of sacrifices. The prophets in the Old Testament and the Tanakh did not reprimand the people. Yahuwah was not reprimanding his people for doing this type of sacrifice. He does for other kinds. So I asked myself also, why does Noah feel it necessary to atone for their sins? I mean, we have just had the destruction of all flesh upon the earth. Judgment's already been rendered. And Noah feels like it's necessary to make atonement. And even, in Job, Job, as a father, is making a sacrifice to atone and cover for his children. Now, we're going to talk about Noah's children in this video, and I've made allusion to, Noah's children before in prior videos. The fact that only Noah was perfect in his generations. The righteousness of Noah covered his son. So here we are seeing Noah making a sacrifice on behalf to cover his children. I think this could be a picture that we're supposed to understand this in light of the Heavenly Father's sacrifice and covering for us. And you know how the scriptures all unfold, but we see Noah doing this early on in history. And Genesis does not have that in it. So Jubilees continues, and King James picks up the story here at this point. And he rejoiced and drank his wine, he and his children with joy. See, the King James in the Masoretic text is not going to tell you that they were actually having a feast that was put into the calendar and those 4 days a year. And it was evening, and he went into his tent, and being drunk, he lay down and slept, and was uncovered in his tent, and he slept. Now here, we don't have the actual Paleo Hebrew of Jubilees to go look at. All we have is the English translation, and I want you to go see, there's a short that I did on gender confusion is what I called it. It's a little short, it's not long, and I talked about this in the Masoretic text. It says her tent, not his tent. And it's interesting where the gender confusion is on the tent that Noah is in, that Abraham is in, Isaac and Jacob. That's all I can say. It's really interesting, the rabbit trail that's in that little short. Okay, continuing with Jubilees. And Ham saw Noah his father naked, and went forth and told his two brethren without. And Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth. And they placed the garment on their shoulders and went backward and covered the shame of their father, and their faces were backward. Now, I don't have this highlighted on the screen, but as I'm speaking and recording this video, I just realized I should have highlighted something. In Jubilees, it says that Shem took his garment and arose, and he and Japheth, and placed the garment on their shoulders. So it's Shem's garment that's being laid over Noah in the book of Jubilees. And in the King James, it just says, and Shem and Japheth took a garment. It doesn't say whose it belonged to. And I think this is actually very insightful about whose garment actually was being laid on Noah. I'll share some more information on the translation that I've done in the Masoretic text about the garment that's being laid on Noah. Okay, verse 10. And Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done unto him. And he cursed his son, and said, Cursed be Canaan, an enslaved servant shall he be unto his brethren. Okay, so the two texts actually look almost identical here. And we have a multitude of theories on why he failed to curse Ham, and why is he cursing his grandson? And I'm not going to cover my thoughts on that in this video. It just make it too long. And there's lots of different theories on this. And this would be something interesting we could talk about on Monday night. And if you want to, put in the comments on this video why you think, what did Canaan do to Noah? And I know that many of you will probably tell me that Leviticus defines what it means to uncover your father's nakedness, and that's okay. So just put that down. If that's where your mind goes, then please put that down. Okay, next verse. Obviously, something happened to Noah, and he's cursing his grandson, which I think is interesting. Verse 11, and he blessed Shem and said, Blessed be Yahuwah Almighty of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Yahuwah shall enlarge Japheth, and Yahuwah shall dwell in the dwelling of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now this is different. Genesis and Jubilees. I just read to you Jubilees. Let me tell you what Genesis is saying, starting in verse 26. And he said, Blessed be Yahuwah Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So in Genesis, it says that basically almost that Japheth might be dwelling in the tents of Shem. I've heard people teach that quite a bit. I've heard that over the years. And in Jubilees, it clearly says that Yahuwah shall dwell in the dwelling of Shem. That's what it says. So, obviously, Canaan is supposed to be a servant of Shem. And unfortunately, since we're looking at the English here on both texts, and we can't get underneath to the Paleo-Hebrew, which does exist for Jubilees, but it's not released to the public. I know I have in no way, shape, or fashion read Ge'ez at all, so I can't help you with the Ethiopian translation. And if any of you want to share some stuff from the Ge'ez Ethiopian, and you understand that language, then feel free to put it in here in the comments. That would be fun to chat about. Verse 13. And Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son, and he was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father. Now, that's missing in the King James. It doesn't say that. And this statement here in Jubilees about Ham departing, and he was upset with his father, that's actually in the first Enoch animal story, because the white bull leaves. So, in either the white, you get into the first Enoch and the animal story, which next year, Yah willing, I'll be glad to incorporate into this study on Jubilees, and we can compare Jubilees and Enoch next year. But you have to ask yourself about Ham, and was he the righteous one? Because he was the white bull that left. Genesis chapter, going to the next verse, continuing. So he parted from his father, he and his sons with him, Cush and Mitzrayim, and Put and Canaan. Now Genesis 10, verse 6, does talk about who the sons are, but it's not telling you that they're leaving. Okay, and that's a difference between these two between the two versions of the story. Now, after Ham leaves, then cities are built, okay? And it says, and he built for himself a city and called its name after the name of his wife. I'm not going to pronounce some of these names. I will not even begin to do them justice. So verse 14 is saying that Ham left and built a city. Verse 15, and Japheth saw it and became envious of his brother, and he too built for himself a city, and he called its name after his wife. Verse 16, and Shem dwelt with his father Noah, and he built a city close to his father on the mountain, and he too called its name after his wife. So we have all these cities named after their wives. And I think that's interesting. And none of these city building information is in the book of Genesis. It's just in Jubilees, verse 17. And behold, these 3 cities are near Mount Lubar, fronting the mountain. It's on the east, the south, and the west on the mountain where the ark landed. Genesis 10, we're going to talk. Let me go ahead and Jubilees, verse 18. And these are the sons of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arpachshad. This son was born 2 years after the flood, and Lud and Aram. Okay, so Jubilees is going into a bit of genealogy information, and so I put here on the left-hand side corresponding verses in Genesis. As you can see, information is kind of not out of order at times in Genesis because it jumps around. Jubilees 19, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Yavon, Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. These are the sons of Noah. Okay, so we've got the building of cities and the listing of grandsons. Now, it's interesting in here that Genesis continues with the sons of Ham, but they are not listed here in the flow of the Jubilees text. Whereas Genesis is flowing down and lists Ham's genealogy, Jubilees does not. It mentions them later, but it doesn't mention them here. And I asked myself why. I don't have an answer, but I thought it was just interesting. Now, the King James, the Masoretic text, in verse 5, says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after his families, and in their nations. Now, this statement about the isles of the Gentiles is not in Jubilees. And now we're comparing these in the flow. And something I want you to know, when it says Gentiles and nations, it is the exact same word, goyim, for both of these. This single word in Paleo Hebrew is translated both as nations and peoples. And I ponder, okay, if in the original Hebrew text, not the Masoretic text, but the one that came before it, that we've talked about before on our channel, if in the original Hebrew text there were 2 different words here, because it is really odd for me, the doctrine that is built around the word Gentiles versus nations, and the fact that in the original text it's exactly the same word. I just want you to ponder that. If you have some thoughts on that, please do share. We can discuss it Monday night. So now in the book of Jubilees, we're going to continue with verse 20. Noah is teaching Torah to his 2 sons. Ham is left, but he's teaching Torah to his sons. Okay? And this is 3 years. This is happening 3 years after Noah's nakedness and that event happened. So the cities are built within 3 years, and the time that he's teaching Torah, this dating here in Jubilees 1324 to 1372, is a 48-year period, just so you know. Noah began to enjoin his sons the ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew, and exhorted his sons to observe righteousness and to cover the shame of their flesh, and to bless their Creator and honor father and mother and love their neighbor, guard their souls from fornication, uncleanness, and all iniquity. Okay, so some of this is going to sound familiar in the 10 Commandments. They've been around. Some of those words have been around for a long time. Again, it was not new. It was new to the children of Yasharel because that was a major reset. But Noah was taught by his fathers and received information, was passed down from Enoch. So this is what he's teaching to his grandchildren and his boys. Verse 21. Now in verse 21, Noah is recounting the story before the flood to his grandchildren, which is from Genesis chapter 6. For owing to these 3 things came the flood upon the earth, namely owing to the fornication wherein the watchers against the Torah of their ordinances went a-whoring after the daughters of men, and took to themselves wives of all that they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness. Okay, so right here, the Torah of the ordinances. See, the watchers were given instructions. They were given Torah, and they broke it. Okay, and Noah is listing the reasons for the flood. That was one. Okay. Now, all this is still going to be, all that I'm about to read to you, if you're listening, in a podcast style, everything that I've been reading to you is missing. This whole Torah section here, where Noah is teaching Torah, is missing, and it's not written in Genesis. Verse 22. And they begat sons, the Nephilim, and they were all unlike, and they devoured one another. And the giant slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo mankind, and man one another. So we have three different groups of what is commonly referred to as the Nephilim, and they're different words here. There's a lot of videos that like to talk all about this. I'm not going to go into the details of this. I probably will next year when I pull in Enoch. Verse 23. And everyone sold himself to work iniquity, and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with iniquity. And after this they sinned against the beast and the birds, and all that moves and walks on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. So it was really horrible, horrific. Verse 25, and Yahuwah destroyed everything from off the face of the earth because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth, he destroyed everything. So now we have the conclusion of the three reasons why Noah said the flood happened. It was because the watchers broke their ordinances, and because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which had been shed in the earth. Those are the three reasons. Continuing with what Noah is saying here. And we were left, I and you, my sons, and everything that entered with us into the ark. And behold, I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness. For in the path of destruction you have begun to walk. And you are parting one from another, and are envious one of another. And so it comes that you are not in harmony, my sons, each with his brother. For I see, and behold, the demons have begun their seduction against you and against your children. And now I fear on your behalf that after my death you will shed the blood of men upon the earth, and that you too will be destroyed from the face of the earth. Okay, this is a key verse here in Jubilees. It's verse 26. So Noah is talking to his sons and grandsons, and he sees them already going astray. I mean, this is not many years after getting off the ark. Things are going wrong. In fact, Noah is seeing that it's going to go practically in the same direction that it went before. Verse 28. For whoso sheds man's blood, and whoso eats the blood of any flesh, shall all be destroyed from the earth. And there shall not be left any man that eats blood, or that sheds the blood of man on the earth, nor shall there be left to him any seed or descendants living under heaven. For into Sheol shall they go, and into the place of condemnation shall they descend, and into the darkness of the deep shall they be removed by a violent death. The only thing I wanted to point out here in Genesis is you go back to Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. It talks about the whoso sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. That does line up here with the Jubilees text. Okay, continuing. Verse 30. There shall be no blood seen upon you. All of the blood there shall be all the days in which you have killed any beast or cattle or whatever flies upon the earth. And work you a good work to your souls by covering that which has been shed on the face of the earth. And you shall not be like him who eats with blood, but guard yourselves that none may eat blood before you. Cover the blood, for thus have I commanded to testify to you and your children together with all flesh. Verse 32, and suffer not the soul to be eaten with the flesh, that your blood which is in your life may not be required at the hand of any flesh that sheds it on the earth. For the earth shall not be clean from the blood which has been shed upon it, for only through the blood of him that shed it will the earth be purified through all its generations. I want to stop for a second. Noah is strictly saying there is not to be any blood upon them. So a question that many of us have had, and if you have thoughts on this, please do put them down in the comments, especially those of you who have not joined us in community, but just watch our videos. There can't be sprinkling of blood upon people and upon their clothes. That would go against what Noah is teaching his sons right here in the book of Jubilees. And I want you to remember that the Apostle James ruled in the book of Acts when they were debating how were they going to have fellowship with the Gentiles. The minimum requirements for fellowship with the Gentiles was all about blood. It ties right back here to what Noah was saying. Those 4 things that James put down in that letter that went out to the Gentiles. Okay, continuing in verse 34. And now, my children, listen, work judgment and righteousness, that you may be planted in righteousness over the face of the whole earth, and your praise lifted up before Yahuwah my Almighty, who saved me from the waters of the flood. I mean, this is the basic message of countless prophets. Verse 34, and behold, you will go and build for yourself cities and plant them in all the plants that are upon the earth, and moreover, all fruit-bearing trees. Okay, this goes, back to the instructions that ended up in Leviticus 19 that we're all familiar with. For 3 years, the fruit of everything that is eaten will not be gathered, and in the 4th year, its fruit will be accounted Kodesh, and they will offer the first fruits, acceptable for the Most High Yahuwah, who created heaven and earth and all things. Let them offer in abundance the first of the wine and oil, as first fruits on the altar of Yahuwah who receives it. And what is left, let the servants of the house of Yahuwah eat before the altar which receives it. And in the 5th year, make you the release, so that you release it in righteousness and uprightness, and you shall be righteous, and all that you plant shall prosper. For thus did Enoch. Verse 38, for thus did Enoch, the father of your father, commanded Methuselah, his son, and Methuselah, his son Lamech. And Lamech commanded me all the things which his fathers commanded him. I mean, the book of Jubilees has Noah saying this when it goes all the way back to Enoch. And Enoch was shown all kinds of things, remember? And it'll be fun when we line this up with the book of Enoch. But Noah's clearly saying, this has been passed down, this is how you do it. Long before the book of Leviticus is written. Okay, Jubilees, verse 39. And I also will give you commandment, my sons, as Enoch commanded his sons in the first Jubilee. While still living, the 7th in his generation, he commanded and testified to his son and his son's sons until the day of his death. So Noah is passing down what Enoch gave to his sons. Okay, that ends the Torah of Noah being given. And we're on to Jubilees chapter 8. So grandchildren are born, and the earth is divided in secret first. This gets pretty interesting. Okay, Jubilees chapter 8, verse 1. In the 29th Jubilee, in the 1st week, in the beginning thereof, Arpachshad took to himself a wife, and her name was, I'm not going to say it, she's the daughter of Susan, the daughter of Elam, and she bare him a son in the 3rd year this week, and he called his name Canaan. Okay, so it's been 49 years since Noah gave them instructions to remind them of the ordinances, time-wise, here in Jubilees. And Arpachshad is the son of Shem. So this is who is giving birth. Who's having the son, Arpachshad. So this is Shem's line that's being talked about. Verse 2. And the son grew, and his father taught him writing. And he went to seek for himself a place where he, Canaan, might seize for himself a city. Not build, but seize. I thought that was an interesting, I so love to see what word is underneath that. Verse 3, and he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it. For it contained the teachings of the watchers in it, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and the moon and the stars and all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. Okay, let's pause. Okay, Canaan, and it's spelled with, Canaan. Let's make sure we get our spellings right, because this is the same son that is in Luke chapter 3, verse 36. Because Luke's genealogy, when it's giving the genealogy of the Messiah, lists this Canaan, which other genealogies don't. Okay? So, one of the reasons that many people, have the theory of why this Canaan keeps getting left out at times is because he brought back the Watchers' teachings. You see, he knew it was wrong. He didn't want Noah to know what he'd done. And it's really interesting to think about this. So if someone can read stories and get the Watchers' teachings, it makes me wonder what is on the rocks of Göbekli Tepe and other sites, archaeological sites, that they are now in recent times shutting down and not allowing archaeologists to talk about them anymore. So what's on those rocks? Well, I can say, because here in Jubilees, I'll continue. Verse 5, and in the 30th Jubilee, in the second week, in the first year thereof, Canaan took himself a wife, the daughter of Madai, the son of Japheth. And in the 4th year, he, Canaan, begat a son, and he called his name Shelah. And he said, truly, I have been sent. And in the 4th year, he was born, and Shelah grew up and took himself a wife. And in the 130th Jubilee, in the 5th week, in the first year of. So, Canaan begets Shelah, and Shelah grows up and takes a wife. Okay, Arpachshad is the son of Shem. So Shem has a grandson, Canaan, who receives the teaching of the Watchers in secret, and it would get Noah angry. And grandsons later, Eber is born, from whom they want to say the Hebrews came from, and Abraham, in the lineage of the forbidden sinful teaching of the Watchers. The reason I'm pointing this out is that most people don't want to talk about where did this information go. Because it's things that would have really displeased Noah, and he might have done something about it. And that's in Shem's lineage, all the way down to Eber, whose lineage produces Abraham. That's a lot to ponder. And if you have thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it Monday night in the discussion, or put it in the comments. Verse 7. And Shelah's wife bare him a son in the 5th year thereof, and he called his name Eber. And he took to himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of, I can't pronounce these names, in the 32nd Jubilee, in the 7th week, in the 3rd year thereof. Okay. Genesis is saying that Eber had sons and daughters. Okay. See, Genesis has got this genealogy happening, but Genesis does not have the understanding that Jubilees gives you of who is this Canaan guy and what did he do. Okay. So we have some secret information floating around somewhere, and Jubilees continues. And in the 6th year, 1567, thereof, she bare him a son, and called his name Peleg. Okay. Now, I've seen all the teachings that tell me, Peleg's name means division. You divided, it means something was divided. And I've been taught to believe that the earth, the landmass, was divided then, or everyone else who was alive was divided into nations at this point. And this is not what Jubilee says, because we are not at the Tower of Babel. We're before that. So there's a Peleg born before and named before the Tower of Babel. Verse 8 in Jubilees continues, they called his name Peleg, for in the days when he was born, when Peleg was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth amongst themselves. For this reason, he called his name Peleg. And they divided it in secret amongst themselves and told it to Noah. So Peleg was named Peleg, according to Jubilees, because the children were dividing the earth in secret. And you have to ask yourself, why does it say that it has to be done in secret? You know, they tell Noah, but for some reason they're doing it in secret. And he did not wait 2 years to name his son when they divided things with Noah. You see, we're going to continue on here, and I want you to realize that this secret division, this secret stuff they're doing is in 1567. And the next verse in Jubilees is verse 10, and this is 2 years later. And it came to pass in the beginning of the 33rd Jubilee, 1569, 2 years later, that they divided the earth into 3 parts, for Shem and Ham and Japheth, according to the inheritance of each, in the first year, in the week when one of us who had been sent was with them. So this is a division that's being recorded now that happens 2 years later, after the secret division happened 2 years earlier. Verse 11, and he called his sons, and they drew nigh to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession, and when they reached forth their hands, and took the writing out of the bosom of Noah their father. Now, Noah calls his sons, and a messenger is there to witness this time, and Noah divides the earth by lots. This is not the same event that we just read earlier that happened 2 years earlier. Okay, the first section that Jubilees talks about is what came to Shem. Okay, and there came forth, verse 12, came forth a writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons in the generations of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water, from the river Tina, and his portion goes towards the west through the middle of this river, and extends till it reaches the waters of the abysses, out of which the river goes forth and pours its waters into the sea Miet, and this river flows into the great sea. And all that is towards the north is Japheth, and all that is toward the south belongs to Shem. And it extends till it reaches Carasso. This is in the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. And his portion extends along the great sea, and it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south, and this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. And it turns from here toward the south, towards the mouth of the great sea, on the shore of its waters, and extends to the west to Afra, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the great Gihon, and to the south of the waters of the Gihon to the banks of the river. And it extends towards the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden, to the south thereof, to the south and the east of the whole land of Eden. And of the whole east it turns to the east, and it proceeds till it reaches the east of the mountains of Rapha, and it extends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. This portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever until his generations forevermore. And Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and for his sons, and he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy. And he had said, Blessed be Yahuwah Almighty of Shem, and may Yahuwah dwell in the dwelling of Shem. Remember, that happened at the nakedness discussion. And he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Kodesh Kodeshim, and the dwelling of Yahuwah, and Mount Sinai, the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These 3 were created as Kodesh places facing each other. And he blessed the Almighty of Elohim, who had put the word of Yahuwah into his mouth, and Yahuwah forevermore. Verse 21. And he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons until the generations forever, the whole land of Eden, and the whole land of the Red Sea, and the whole land of the east, and India, and the Red Sea, and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Caphtor, and all the mountains of Senir, and Ammana, and the mountains of Asher in the north, and the land of Elam, Asher, and Babel, and Susan, and Madai, and all the mountains of Ararat, and the region beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur, towards the north. A blessed and spacious land, and all that is in it is very good. Now, I am not going to do a whole bunch with maps. There are lots of videos on map identification for these places, and the God culture has interesting theories, and they want to place where they want to place the Eden. I just want to point out here that verse 21 says the whole land of Eden, not just a garden. So Shem's getting the whole land of Eden, and Eden is a subset of the earth. It's not the entire earth. I've heard people want to say that Eden is all of the land masses and the whole place is Eden, and I'm like, no, that's not true. And verse 21 says that Shem got the whole land of Eden. So somewhere in Shem's land is the Garden of Eden, because the garden is in Eden. I just want to point that out. So I have to ask myself, where is Nod then? Because in Genesis 4:16, it says, and Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. I want you to make note that this does not say he went to the east of the garden. He went to the east of the whole Eden. So I ask, where is Nod? The children of Eden. I'm just putting these here as food for thought for you, because I'm going to tie one of the words in here in the next chapter that we're going to review next week. But most people haven't realized that there's some verses about the children of Eden. Okay? 2 Kings 9:12. Have the Elohim of the nations delivered them which my fathers have destroyed, as Gozan and Haran and Rezpha, and the children of Eden, which were in Thelasar. Now, I went to Google Maps. It's kind of fun to do things like this. And I put in Thelasar. And you know, I've done this with other things in Scripture in Google Maps, just to see where Google's going to tell me something is. And when I take Thelasar, there's only one place in the entire world that shows up in Google Maps. And it is in the Himalayas of India, across from Pakistan. I kid you not. And remember, in chapter 5 of Jubilees, where I thought the ark actually landed, and what mountain it was attached to, is in this place. And that's where it said, in the children of Eden, which were in Thelasar. Isaiah 37:12. Have the gods of the nations delivered them, which of my fathers? See, this is like the exact same verse here in Isaiah 37:12, and it calls it Telasar in the King James. The H is gone. And if I put this Telasar into Google Maps, I get nothing. But the Thelasar shows up in India, right across from Pakistan, in a place that's very disputed, by the way. Okay. Last verse that has the children of, or anything referencing the children of Eden, is Amos 1:5, which says, I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant from the plain of Avon, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Aden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith Yahuwah. So maybe someday we'll do a little mini study on this children of Eden and this Thelasar, because it could be kind of interesting. So the next section in Jubilees is Ham, and what did he get in the lots? Now, verse 22. And for Ham came forth the second portion, beyond the Gihon, towards the south, to the right of the garden, and it extends towards the south, and extends to all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the west, to the sea of Atel, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the sea of Ma'uk, that sea into which everything which is not destroyed descends. And it goes forth towards the north to the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon, till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for Ham, as the portion for which he was to occupy forever for himself and his sons unto their generations forever. So this is saying that the Garden of Eden here, then if the Garden of Eden is here, it can't be on the ocean floor, nor invisible, nor in the sky above. It would imply that Ham knew where the Garden of Eden was. I mean, he knew, he was learning about his land, okay? And Jubilees is describing exactly all his land because he's going to give it to his descendants. So I'm just saying, I don't think the Garden of Eden and where it was is covered up or unknown as people might think. And again, I'm not going to go into all the map study. It's really not my forte. I'd be really interested to hear your comments on this video about where you think the Garden of Eden really is. Japheth. And as for Japheth, came forth the third portion beyond the river Tina to the north of the outflow of its waters, and it extends northeasterly to the whole region of Gog and to all the country east thereof. And it extends northerly to the north, and it extends to the mountains of Kelt towards the north and towards the sea of Maok, and it goes forth to the east as far as the region of the waters of the sea. And it extends until it approaches the west of Farah, and it returns towards Aphirag, and it extends easterly to the waters of the sea of Miat. And it extends to the region of the river Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the mountain Rapha, and it turns round towards the north. This is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons as a portion of his inheritance, which he should possess for himself and his sons for their generations forever. 5 great islands and a great land in the north. But it is cold, and the land of Ham is hot, and the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but is a blended cold and heat. So that's all about Japheth's land. Now the question for me, the real question, is did the sons of Noah keep to their secret division, or with Noah and his lots that was in front of a messenger? That's the question that, in my mind, goes unanswered. And I'll talk about it in just a minute. So now we're into Jubilees chapter 9. And Ham, verse 1, and Ham divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush towards the east, and to the west of him for Mitzrayim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof on the sea of Canaan. Now, I checked with Joshua, who does like maps, and he has this big map book. He said, so this is basically the west coast of Africa, where the Sahara is. But, you know, on some of the ancient maps before the 1600s, they showed that all this land that was originally meant for Canaan was all beautiful. I mean, it shows it lush green, lakes and rivers. It shows it where Atlan or Atlantis might have been. And only later in time, once you get to like the 1600s, does it become a desert, the Sahara Desert. So in the original maps, it was a beautiful place. I just want to point that out. And for some reason, Canaan said, oh, I don't want that place. Okay. Now, Genesis, and, you know, I'm lining things up. Genesis in chapter 10, verses 8, through 14, or actually through 16, has a whole discussion about Cush begetting Nimrod, and he became a mighty hunter on the earth. Okay? This whole description about Cush's lineage is not in Jubilees at all. And I think that's very interesting because there are a lot of doctrine or insight, and people study this portion of Genesis a lot, and it's not in Jubilees. And, once you get to Genesis chapter 10, verse 15, we're talking about Canaan begetting sons who are the groups of people in the promised land of the Israelites that they're supposed to kill off when they take over the promised land with Joshua. And there are places, once we get to Genesis 10:19, Gaza should sound familiar, Sodom and Gomorrah, and Admah. These are places that we can find some of these places on maps today, and we know where they're located. So this whole, Genesis 10:20 says these are the sons of Ham, and after their families and after their tongues. And that is just, you don't line this up with Jubilees, because Jubilees just doesn't talk about Ham, which I think is very interesting. Okay, now Jubilees goes to Shem. And I've matched it up here with Genesis chapter 10 just fine. But what stuck out to me, I've put it up here on a line by itself, is Genesis chapter 10 verse 21, because it says, "Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born." And I showed this to Joshua, and we both look at this and go, what is this doing here, and what is this saying? If you have researched Genesis chapter 10, verse 21, and you can explain what this is saying, I'd love to hear the explanation. Because Eber had children, and he's a grandson. So we could be saying that he's, the great-grandfather of all the children of Eber. But why did they stick in English the father? It just is confusing. The brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. It's really weird in the way this is written in English. That's all. I'll keep going. Okay, continuing on, verse 2. For Shem. And Shem also divided amongst his sons. The first portion came to Elam, and to his sons to the east of the river Tigris, till it approaches the east, the whole land of India. And on the Red Sea, on its coast, and the waters of Dedan, and all the mountains of Mebri and Elah, and the land of Susan, and all that is on the side of Farnak, to the Red Sea and the river Tena. And for Ashur came forth the second portion, all the land of Ashur and Nineveh and Shinar, and to the border of India, and it ascends and skirts the river. So Ashur, Assyria, went all the way to India. And for Apakshad came forth the third portion, all the land of the region of the Chaldees to the east of the Euphrates, bordering on the Red Sea, and all the waters of the desert close to the tongue of the sea, which took towards Egypt, and all the land of Lebanon and Sinir and Ammana to the border of the Euphrates. 5. And for Aram there came forth the fourth portion, all the land of Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and the Euphrates, to the north of the Chaldees, to the border of the mountains of Ashur and the land of Ararah. And there came forth for Lud the fifth portion, the mountains of Ashur and all the pertaining to them, till it reaches the great sea, and till it reaches the east of Ashur his brother. Now we're going to read about Japheth. Verse 7. And Japheth also divided the land of his inheritance among his sons. And the first portion came forth for Gomer, to the east from the north side to the river Tena, and in the north there came forth for Magog all the inner portions of the north, until it reaches the sea of Meat. And for Madai came forth his portion, that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the islands, and to the coasts of the islands. And for Yavon came forth the fourth portion, every island, and the islands which are towards the border of Lud. And for Tubal there came forth the fifth portion, in the midst of the tongue which approaches toward the border of the portion of Lud, to the second tongue, to the region beyond the second tongue, unto the third tongue. And for Meshach came forth the sixth portion, all the region beyond the third tongue, till it approaches the east of Gadir. And for Tyrus there came forth the seventh portion, 4 great islands in the midst of the sea, which reach to the portion of Ham, and the islands of the Kamaturi came out by lot for the sons of Arpachshad as his inheritance. Now, what Jubilees does not have that Genesis adds at this point is Genesis 10, verse 5, which says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, and after their families and their nations." Now, notice that we've got that word Gentiles again. Okay, the isles of the Gentiles. It's the same word for nations. Goyim, same word. Genesis 10:32 adds a little thing here that says, "These are the families of the sons of Noah, and after their generations and their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood." Okay, so that's how Genesis closes out that section and chapter. But Jubilees has something that Genesis does not, as it closes out its chapter, and it starts in verse 14. "And thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah their father, and he bound them all by an oath, imprecating a curse on every one that sought to seize the portion which they had not fallen to him by lot. And they all said, so be it, for themselves and their sons forever throughout their generations, till the day of judgment, on which Yahuwah Almighty shall judge them with a sword and with fire, and all the unclean wickedness of their errors, wherewith they have filled the earth with transgression and uncleanness and fornication and sin." So I wondered about that. See, this is I guess if I were, when I read these chapters, this was the big thing that stuck with me, is what happened to the original secret division of the earth? I mean, what do you think is going on right now with immigration? And all the world powers who are purposely moving masses of people far away from their ancestral homelands. And this kind of forced migration has happened many times in Scripture. I mean, when Assyria took over the people and they were sent into exile, when Babylon took over the people and they were sent into exile, they're moving people away from their ancestral homelands. And Israel was scattered all over the place. So I just ask yourself, what's going on? Is it, and ask yourself about this oath. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on Monday night, what you think about this. So this is the end of chapters 7 through 9. I've limited it again to right about an hour. I think that's long enough for these videos. And for our discussions, we fill up 2 hours easy. So I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and leave some comments. I've asked you several questions all throughout this video to comment on. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Shalom. So I hope you've enjoyed Jubilees chapter 6, and I look forward to our discussion on Monday night. Please like the video, leave me a comment because it really helps the YouTube algorithm. Share it with more people. And if you want to join us in our discussion, then and are not a part of our community, then please go to the description, and there are links there that you can follow. Shalom.